Hello everybody, it's your friendly digital technology librarian, Christy here. We've reached another Friday, so of course I have another Film Rec Friday ready for everybody out there. Now, this week's episode is all about remakes and reimaginings. Now, we've all probably seen a pretty terrible remake or reimagining at some point in our lives. I mean, honestly, it's kind of hard not to. There are a lot of them. And like I said, a lot of times they are not always the best. I mean, we just talked about one a few weeks ago. The Netflix adaptation of Persuasion is hugely polarizing amongst the Austinian crowd. I myself absolutely hated it, but I have plenty of friends who really enjoyed it. That's one of the other great things about remakes is that they can spur a conversation that maybe you wouldn't normally have. The other really fantastic thing about even the worst possible remake or reimagining is that it gives you the chance to do sort of a deep analytical dive into a property, character, story that you happen to really enjoy. So anytime you can do that, it's always a good thing, I think. It gives us a chance to get a little bit closer to that source material that maybe really means something to you yourself. So today we are going to delve into 4 stories that are either remakes or imaginings of different iconic characters or stories that have been told throughout history. And I think these ones are all really pretty solid. They have something that will grab a fan pretty early on within their opening. So, as always, these are all available entirely for free with the use of your Milan-Berlin library card. And without any further ado, let's dive right into the Rex. Okay, we are going to kick things off with a selection from Hoopla, and that is 2012's The Makeover. Now, The Makeover is a remake reimagining of the classic Pygmalion My Fair Lady story, and in this one, it supposes what if Professor Higgins was, instead of a man, a woman in contemporary society, and what if the object of her focus was, instead of a woman, a man? It also has a political background to it, of an American setting, in particular in Boston, and it's a lot of fun. I was really very pleasantly surprised with how much I enjoyed this one. It is a Hallmark Hall of Fame film that has a completely different stable of actors than what you would normally expect. It stars Julia Stiles, who I absolutely adore. Anyone who grew up in the 90s absolutely knows her work. She was in 10 Things I Hate About You, Save the Last Dance, so many teen films. She was essentially like a teen rom-com queen for a good patch of years. And it's always really fun for me to sort of see how those actors, how their performing style evolves. And she does a really solid job in this. She is the one playing Hannah Higgins, and David Walton plays Elliot Doolittle instead of Eliza Doolittle, and their chemistry is really, really solid. So in The Makeover, we have Hannah Higgins, who is an education consultant. She decides to run for a political position and she ends up losing out, and a huge portion of that is due to her personality not being folksy enough. And she's definitely sort of like the academic elite. And she and her friend, who is played by Cameron Manheim, who is always phenomenal. Again, the cast is really kind of outrageously unlike most Hallmark Hall of Fame casts. So the two of them make a bet when they see this just random local beer vendor come in. His Boston accent is so thick, he's pretty much unintelligible. Like, I honestly had a hard time understanding his lines, which is exactly what you're supposed to, I mean, like, that's the whole point. And they said, let's turn him into this politico who can actually win. I mean, folksy charm. Hannah is going to teach him how to speak, how to interact with the public. And, you know, it's Pygmalion, but in a political gender bent sphere. And again, it was so much fun. And the chemistry between those two is great. I don't know that I was expecting to enjoy this as much as I did when I was reading the synopsis. I was definitely like, whatever. It's another Hallmark film. I enjoy Hallmark Hall of Films when I'm in the mood for them, but this doesn't even feel like a Hallmark movie. It really does feel like a more grown up 90s teen rom-com with like better acting and a better scriptwriter. It was a good time. And I think that's kind of the point. I wasn't looking for Oscar style direction or acting, but I got a really solid, fun movie. And it was really, really fun sort of comparing the originals touch points, like, you know, instead of a Cockney flower girl, you've got a Bostonian beer vendor, and how the different accents have to be adjusted, like the attitudes and how behavior mimics but also shifts to make sense within a contemporary society. Because, of course, like the norms for My Fair Lady era setting are not going to be the norms for a 2010s setting in the States either. So it was fun to sort of see the clever shifts that they made, and to see the things that actually stayed the same regardless of the gender of the characters or the setting or the time setting. It was really fun to see the things that still worked, no matter what. So if you are looking for something with a great cast of familiar actors, because you absolutely will be going through and watching me like, I know that person, I know that person. If you're looking for something that is quite well written, if you are looking for something that um, has like a nice kind of throwback feel, like if you're already familiar with Pygmalion and My Fair Lady, this is definitely going to be a fun one to watch. Or if you're just looking for a romantic comedy that has good chemistry between the leads and is entertaining from beginning to end, check out The Makeover. It might surprise you, especially if you're not a fan of Hallmark movies. I 100% think that even if you're not a Hallmark movie fan, this is a good one to try out. So again, available on Hoopla, 2012's The Makeover. It's a must watch. Okay, moving on to another selection. This one is also available on Hoopla, and it is 2015's Mr. Holmes. Now, Mr. Holmes, as you would probably guess, is a reimagining of the Sherlock Holmes character when he is in his 90s. I have been a massive fan of Sherlock Holmes, whether we're talking about the books, which I absolutely adore, or if we're talking about all of the different iterations, whether it be movies or TV series. I mean, I have been a massive Arthur Conan Doyle fan pretty much from the get-go of my reading experience. And I don't know, there was something about Mr. Holmes that I really, really absolutely adored. It's definitely a softer story style and character than you will see in pretty much every other iteration, but it still makes sense. You know, this is a Sherlock Holmes that we're seeing in his twilight years. It's not the Holmes that we have watched throughout his history and all of these different iterations. It's something different, but you definitely have that same hard-edged feel that you would find in any of his earlier adaptations. So I just, there was something about this that really got to me, and I really, really loved it. And I think if you're a Holmes fan, you will enjoy it as well. So in Mr. Holmes, we are following Sherlock in his 90s. He's retired from work. We don't know in the beginning why he's retired. He's kind of, well, he's not kind of, he's very isolated. He lives with his housekeeper and his housekeeper's son in this little cottage. He no longer does what has always been iconic to his character, always thinking quickly, trying to solve these mysteries, and he just doesn't. What we do know is that he has a bit of a failing memory. Not Nothing related to any disease or anything. He's just getting older, so the recall isn't quite what it was, and that was what made Holmes Holmes, you know? So it's sort of like this bittersweet but beautiful journey with him throughout this whole film. We see him being pulled back into one particular case, the very last case that he had, and that was not sufficiently solved in his mind. And through his relationship with his housekeeper's son, he begins to piece things together again. The son has this curious mind that he's really drawn to. It reminds him, of course, of himself. And the boy is persistent, and they develop this sort of father-son relationship. And it's, I don't know, it's just the side of Holmes that you don't get to see. But again, it doesn't turn him into a fluffy bunny. That's the other thing. In a lot of when you read suppositions about what Holmes would be like when he's older, he's like this very kindly grandfather character, and I don't really think that's what happens here. I think it's just another evolution of Holmes, and I think in large part it works because Sir Ian McKellen is cast as Sherlock, and he just has this phenomenal way of making sure the performance is very nuanced. You get where he came from. You get that hard-edged Holmes, but you also get the Holmes that is looking for legacy isn't quite the same right word, but he's looking to sort of figure out what he wants to be remembered for and what is really important. And I don't know. There's just something very effective about the storytelling in this. I think, and I do think in large part it's the acting. It's something that I don't think another actor would have done anywhere near as well. Now, you do get a a primary mystery that we are solving. Like I said, we're pulling bits and pieces of his memory that are he's suddenly recalling and we get to see things unfold, what actually happened back in the day, and that's sort of juxtaposed with this very sanitized version that we discover Watson has put together of this final case as well. We also get another minor mystery going on with a Japanese gentleman who is blaming Holmes for his father's desertion, and that adds a completely different emotional level to things. And it's all of these little bits and pieces as they roll together, that same kind of confusion happens, like the cacophony of multiple problems being solved and being juggled in the mind, that comes across really, really well on film. um, so again, if you enjoy just mysteries in general, if you are a Sherlock fan who is hesitant about an older Sherlock reiteration, if you're a fan of Ian McKellen, you haven't watched this yet. What are you doing? If you're just looking for a really solid film with good storytelling and phenomenal acting, make sure you check out Mr. Holmes. I liked it so much more than I was expecting to, and I also just love McKellen's take on the aging character. I really did think it was absolutely phenomenal, and I would say this is probably my pick of the week. I think that if you are if you are interested in a good movie, you'll like this. If you're interested in the other elements that I mentioned before, you'll like it. This was an excellent movie. So again, available on Hoopla, 2015's Mr. Holmes. You won't regret it. For something a little bit more serious, hop on over to Canopy for 2018's Ophelia. Ophelia is an interesting reimagining of a really iconic story. So, in this movie, we are looking at the Hamlet story from the point of view of Ophelia, and that opens up so many different avenues that you don't necessarily have when we're focused on just Hamlet. Of course, there's tons of stuff totally just thrown in that's completely new to the story. I mean, completely new to the story. So if you're looking for like scene to scene, dialogue to dialogue crossover, that's not what you get here at all. But if you're looking for something that unfolds different elements, that definitely plays around with plot, but that still keeps your basic through line, this might be something you find absolutely fascinating. I know I did. One, you've got an extraordinary cast. Daisy Ridley does a very good job with Ophelia. Daisy Ridley is, of course, super duper famous now for Star Wars. But you've also got amazing performers in every other role. Naomi Watts is in this. Clive Owen is in this. You've got George McKay. Tom Felton of Draco from Harry Potter fame. I mean, they're really solid performers in this, and they really do go after the role, and the new situations that they're sort of put in. Well, not new situation per se, because you do get basic like touch points that are one for one, but there's just a lot added to it, and that's what I meant when I was talking about how it is certainly different. But yeah, Ophelia is a different Ophelia. And it begs the question, since the Shakespearean work is so focused on Hamlet, what have we missed about Ophelia? Um, and in this, we get to see like all of the other things that are going on in the background, like her madness and her relationship with the other people besides Hamlet. She's, you know, this motherless child who is brought in to Elsinore Castle by Queen Gertrude when she was quite young, and she becomes one of Gertrude's most trusted ladies in waiting. And then this relationship with Hamlet happens, and how that sort of shifts everything. Of course, there's the death of Hamlet's father, and how that just starts a snowball that cannot be stopped. But then there's just other elements going on in the background that, of course, we wouldn't, it's not even mentioned within the play, but it really helps sort of build up a very different but sort of believable Ophelia, and I kind of absolutely adored that. I do find, the Shakespearean heroines that are just sort of in the background, or wallpaper essentially. I love seeing stories like this that flesh them out, that give them actual personalities, besides like sad or crazy or whatever. And I just find it a lot of fun, like this sort of, as an audience member, when you say things like, oh, I wouldn't have done that, or I would look at it this way. I mean, like, that's exactly what happens. Like, whoever put this together, that was what they said. They were like, well, what happens if you do this with her? Or what happens if you do that? And I don't know. I just really enjoy stories that do that. If you are one of those people who wants like a carbon sort of back and forth between the play and something different, this is probably not, again, for you. But if you are more like me and you just like seeing different suppositions, if you like asking questions about characters, if you like seeing things fleshed out, make sure you do check this out. Canopy 2018's Ophelia. It's definitely an interesting watch. Okay, my final recommendation for this week is available on Canopy, and that is 1996's Twelfth Night. Now, this is just a simple adaptation of Shakespeare's work, but there are some very subtle shifts that make it really fresh and really interesting, and it's just a fantastic adaptation of the play. I mean, I've seen a lot of adaptations of Twelfth Night. It's one of my favorite Shakespearean stories. But this is really, honestly, one of my absolute favorites. It's just so much fun. So in this iteration of Twelfth Night, we are in a 19th century sort of Cornwall countryside setting, and the cast is just exceptionally awesome. So basic storyline of Twelfth Night, you have a set of twins. They are shipwrecked. The female twin, Viola, believes her brother has died at sea. She takes on his identity so she can travel as a man safely, and she ends up in the service of this guy named Duke Orsino. Duke Orsino, God, this is so complicated when I try and think about how to explain it. Duke Orsino has been infatuated with a young woman named Olivia for ages and ages. He is kind of stalkery when you think about it. It's a product of its time. Um, but Viola ends up sort of falling in love with Orsino, and he's still pursuing Olivia, and you've got all of these twists and turns. I don't want to give anything hugely away, even though, I mean, it's Shakespeare, you know the basic storyline for the most part, but there are massive comedies of errors, and it's just a delightful story in general. But this cast just turns it into absolute magic. You've got Toby Stephens playing Orsino. I'm a huge fan of Toby Stephens. He's been in a ton of really awesome plays and films and series. It's just great. You've got Helena Bonham Carter playing Olivia. Bonham Carter is just fantastic no matter what she does. I mean, like, seriously, whether she's playing like a villain or a heroine, she's just always awesome. Ben Kingsley is in this. Nigel Hawthorne is in this. Imelda Staunton is in this. I mean, it's a ridiculous cast of British actors. It really, really is. So if you're looking for exceptional acting, this is the pick to watch. I mean, seriously, it's like a masterclass. It's kind of insane how many people are in this film. you have really phenomenal settings. I mean, the 19th century shift just makes it kind of perfect. I don't know. The 1800s is a period that I really just like everything, like from the fashion to like homes and architecture. It's just kind of perfect. Um, to your basic 12th Night storyline, it's all just absolutely awesome. And I really do think that Nunn's adaptation of the work is just spot on. Like all of his decisions and choices are make perfect sense, and it's just filmed in such a way that is absolutely marvelous. It's hilarious in the places where it's supposed to be funny and in a very accessible way. Um, it makes Shakespeare something that I think anybody can watch, even if the language is usually like the style of language is usually a barrier for you. I really do think that this particular form performance is one that grabs you no matter what. And even if you're not normally a Shakespeare fan, I think you would 100% enjoy this one. So, if you're just looking for a straight Shakespeare adaptation, if you're looking for exceptional acting, gorgeous settings, beautiful fashion, make sure you watch Twelfth Night on Canopy. It's amazing. If I didn't pick Mr. Holmes for my pick of the week, this 100% would be it. It's been a favorite for literally decades for me, and I can't recommend it enough. As like a little bonus recommendation, if you're looking for something even more accessible than this adaptation of Twelfth Night, make sure you go to our just CleanNut services and check out the DVD or Blu-ray of She's the One or She's the Man. It is a teen soccer-centric adaptation of Twelfth Night starring Amanda Bynes and, get it, Channing Tatum. This one is one that is absolutely ridiculous. It's silly as all get out, but it's definitely a really serviceable retelling of Twelfth Night. And, again, because it's a contemporary setting, there's like the whole boys' school, gender bending kind of element to this. It really does work in a contemporary setting, and it's just a lot of fun. So, of course, like I said, Canopy, 12th Night available on there. Like your classic retelling, or if you're looking for something a little off the beaten path, She's the Man, available on DVD or Blu-ray, also absolutely charming and hilarious. So those were all of my recommendations for our remakes and reimaginings week. If you have any recommendations for films that would fit that category, make sure you comment with those below. I love getting those recommendations. It's so much fun for me to like hop in and check those out. If you have any recommendations for themes that you'd like to see us cover in the future, make sure you definitely put those in the comments. I'm always looking for help with that. Thank you, as always, for joining me. I absolutely adore putting these lists together. It's one of my favorite things to do. And I'm always looking forward to hearing back from you on what you agree with, what you disagree with, if you have other films that you think are kind of fitting, but maybe just don't hit the mark quite right. I love that kind of feedback. So please comment and have a conversation with me. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and draw this episode to a close. Thank you again for joining me, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye.